I want to talk a little bit about some of the complexities and the moral questions around this situation of an unnamed Conservative male MP who's been accused of sexual misconduct towards an aide. And this has got attention because the Conservatives have not suspended this MP. The Times hasn't named him. I haven't followed the case very closely. Obviously, there's been other things in the news. Um, I don't know if other newspapers have named this MP. Obviously, it's a man. Um, but there's a lot of questions around this. I've just been reading this is actually from a few days ago, from the 5th of August, and this is their editorial on the case. See there. Now, I have to be honest. That editorial has made me rethink it a little bit. My first instinct was that whilst I'm sympathetic to a lot of the issues that the Me Too campaign has raised, I really am. I also think that there's been a damaging effect for the principles of due process, not necessarily due process itself, but the principles of due process. So, for example, I am not so comfortable with the idea of people being punished before they've been found guilty of something. Um, is suspension punishment? Well, in this case, there's calls for the MP to be suspended pending an investigation, and the Times points out that in any other walk of life that would be the case. Is that justified? Well, here's the thing: an allegation is just an allegation until it's proven to be a fact. I mean, until the accused is found guilty in a court of law. But I suppose if someone's accused of a serious crime like sexual misconduct or rape, for example, and they just continue in their job as if nothing's happened, it might actually be practically difficult for their, and I'm not just talking parliamentarians, but in like business people or media executives in a corporation, anyone in a high profile position or an important position or a position of responsibility, if they continue doing their job whilst high profile accusations, excuse me, while serious accusations are going on, it might make it practically difficult for everyone involved. So maybe a temporary suspension is justified and practical. Practical because it allows the organization, the body responsible, or at least that they are part of, to have a thorough investigation, and also for the accusers or the alleged victims to feel confident that they can be safe to speak out. What the Times has argued, they haven't named the MP as they say for now, because they did point out that there have been recent cases where people have been accused, high profile figures have been named and accused of serious crimes only to be found innocent. One example of this is Cliff Richard when he was accused of predatory behaviour, and the BBC had to make an apology. Um, Sir Cliff Richard has spoken out about how that devastated his life, which is not surprising if you're, a famous person and have very serious allegations brought against you. Even if you're found innocent in the court of law, I think the damage is always going to be there. There will be some people who always have a question mark in their head. I am not generally comfortable with the idea that someone can be named as a defendant, but the accuser has anonymity. There have been cases where women have lied. And it shouldn't be controversial to say that because it's just a fact. That's not the same as saying, oh, let's not believe women. It's not the same at all. And one of my concerns about Me Too is it's had this kind of black and white narrative. All women tell the truth, and all men are potentially guilty, i.e., all men who are accused. So I think that's very damaging um, outlook. I mean, I think with Me Too, what it has been good at is really challenging this culture of powerful men abusing their positions. Um, but it's undeniable that there are high profile women who are hypocrites who have jumped on this movement and they were silent for years, whilst younger women in a more vulnerable position had to stay silent. Now, where I am very sympathetic to Me Too is that, particularly with popular male celebrities, um, there is a sort of culture of shaming alleged victims. That is to say, when people say, "Oh, why didn't you come forward at the time?" In many cases, they did, and they weren't believed. So, in that sense, I'm very sympathetic to those issues in the Me Too campaign. But I do think that some of its rhetoric clouds issues like this. Now, getting back to this specific case, um, there's another problem here for the Conservative Party, and that is elitism. It kind of looks like, I mean, it's difficult to say one law for them and another for everyone else because this man hasn't been found guilty yet. He may or may not be innocent. But I do think it looks like the Conservatives kind of protecting their own a bit. And I guess I've changed my position a little bit. That's a well-written editorial, It lays out every aspect of this, and it's a difficult one because if someone's suspended, I suppose we shouldn't see suspension as punishment in and of itself. Um, and I don't think there should be. I think there should be a sort of balance. I mean, there shouldn't be a lot of pay when someone is suspended until they've been found guilty. And if they are found guilty, then maybe that period that they were suspended, then the amount that would have been their salary should be given to the victims. There can be ways around that, but I'm not a legal expert, and I'm thinking more from a human point of view. I mean, for the alleged victims and for the alleged accused. I think a lot of Me Too's concerns are valid, but I also think they need to recognise that it can also go the other way. It isn't fair, for example, that a man is named as you know, um, a rape defendant and the accuser enjoys anonymity, or at least enjoys is probably the wrong word. She has anonymity, or he could be in cases of gay rape as well. Um, but the Times also points out that in cases of serial abuse, naming the defendant can encourage other women to come forward. You would get that in situations, for example, of serial rapists or serial predators, and that's a valid argument. I think this is a very difficult thing trying to get a balancing act because on one hand you want to ensure due process. On the other hand, you don't want to have a situation where it looks like elitism and it looks like powerful men just being protected. Um, so it is a difficult one. The Times concludes with this statement: the public can tell the difference between allegations and a conviction. The law should beware creating a means by which the rich and powerful can shield themselves from scrutiny and censure. That's a valid point. Although I'm not sure I entirely agree that the public are always that open minded. I do think, for example, there's some feminists out there who will just assume men are guilty. Just as there's some, for want of a better term, fanboys who cannot fathom the idea that their hero might actually be not the figure that they think he is. So much of this comes down to balance. And I don't think that's trivializing it. I think that's really looking at the fact these issues are difficult. Um, I mean, Me Too's big argument is that for too long women have been ignored, and for too long powerful men have escaped justice. And I think there's some truth in that. And I am sympathetic to, certainly I think it's disgraceful that women who make accusations get stigmatized. At least there has been a history of that. Having said that, and this is getting more into the realm of domestic abuse as opposed to anything sexual allegations, but the fallout from the Depp Heard case, and I haven't commented on that because there's a lot of ins and outs to that one, but that case really blows a big hole in the idea that women are always innocent and it's always a black and white situation because there has been audio showing Amber Heard admitting that she is being abusive. There has been audio indicating that far from being an oppressed woman in an abusive relationship, Amber Heard is actually a very coercive individual. Now, that's my perception from the audios that I've heard. I'm not going to say that she's just X, Y, and Z and Depp's totally innocent. I don't know that. But maybe, for example, some of his drug habits might be a result of dealing with her. Who knows? Um, but I do think that case, what's the feminist answer to that? How would they respond to the fact that Amber Heard has openly admitted to being abusive in these audio tapes? Um, it's one of my biggest issues with feminism is it always assumes that the woman must be telling the truth, and that's not always the case. Um, And Me Too has kind of put out that narrative, believe all women. Well, that's ridiculous. I think each case needs to be treated on its own merit. I think there are some overriding themes that need to be considered, but in this case, maybe the Tories should suspend this MP, or at least take the whip away from him. As it stands, they're like asking him to give it up voluntarily, which is a bit trivial. It is a bit sort of like, oh, please just give it up, because otherwise you're making us look bad. If he's innocent, then hopefully that will be shown in a court of law and his name can be cleared. Um, and any newspaper that makes false allegations against him, he would be justified in suing them. But at the moment, it does look like the Tories are just protecting him, which isn't good optics.